I guess I could start this early. So, yep, I've reached 100 subscribers. That don't really know what that gives me, but it's helped. It's nice to see that. Um, I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I wanted to start by looking up some words and that were suggested to me by my brother. And if you have any words that you might want to look up, you can let me know in the chat. Um, so I'll start with literally and see what we can find out. I haven't looked up any of these words previously, so I don't know what we're gonna find. But I'll go where I normally do when I start looking words up for my episodes. I'm thinking about putting all these words together into a video, the top 5 misused or words of 2017 or earlier, because I don't know when this word changed, but we'll find out. I'm sure. We're going to go with literally right now. We'll look up literally and see what how it's changed over time. There we go. Now it's a little bit easier to read. So, first place I usually go is the Oxford English Dictionary. You can see right here. Let me fix something. There we go. That's what I want. Okay. You'll also get to see that the reason I like dictionaries so much is because I'm a terrible speller. Really. So I spent a lot of time in them when I was a kid, and I've grown to appreciate them. Okay, let's see. It's borrowing from Latin. Let's take a look at what the definitions it gives are here first. Of or relating to the writing, study, or content of literature. Oh, I put in the wrong one. That's literary. Literally. Okay. Sorry, Mike. I'm really not a great speller. So, that's why I do what I do. Here we go. In a literal, exact, or actual sense, not figuratively or allegorically. And when it uses a word that seems to be the same, I'll usually go and do a search for that as well, just so we can get that definition, because I don't like it when dictionaries reuse the same words. Of or relating to a letter or letters. Now, one thing to keep in mind when looking through the Oxford English Dictionary is the first definition it gives is the oldest definition they can find. And right down here it shows you examples of the word. So this is 1398. These words are terrible. I can never. Names are awful. Bartholomeus Anglicus. And this character is called the thorn. So this is the Lippus B. To scrape the voice of literal. So what it looks like here is the meaning comes from that's what the text says. It's in the letters there. And when I put together my episodes, normally I'll read through this etymology up here, and I can usually find information in the etymology that's interesting, and I can look up other aspects of it and facets that make it that I can make into a story and tell during my shows. So it comes into English from Middle French, and I usually tell my stories in the reverse order of this. So I'll start down here with the Latin. Sometimes this can be hard to read because of the way they put it. Of or relating to the letter of a text, obtained by taking words and passages in their primary and usual meaning, without regard to any underlying significance, mysticism, or allegory. And so that's what the French word, littéral, meant before it came into English. Let's see if I can skip down a little ways. And it's etonym in post-classical Latin, relating to books, literature, relating to correspondence, learned, written. Okay, let me go back to literally and see if it comes up with anything. Italian, literalmente. No, that doesn't have anything more. So it looks like it has to do pretty much throughout its history with just having to do with what a text literally means. Thank you for your patience with me. This is my first live stream. Like I said in my dictionary video, I have no idea what I'm doing. Classical Latin, littera, meaning letter. So it goes back to what the words say, not what the meaning behind them is, not any kind of interpretation. When my brother suggested this word, he said the Webster's Dictionary had changed their definition of literally to figuratively. So we're going to look up the Webster's Dictionary. Merriam-Webster, right there. Literally, in a literal sense or manner as such, in a way that uses the ordinary or primary meanings of a term or expression, in effect, virtually, used in an exaggerated way to emphasize a statement or description that is not literally true. This is the definition that he wanted me to point out in my videos, that we have used this word so much in an exaggerated way that it now literally means virtually. It doesn't even mean figuratively. It means virtually. So, usually when I'm collecting notes for my shows, I will copy and paste this information, and it's too big. I didn't want that. I want it to be smaller. There we go. That's what I want. So literally, another fun place I like to go is the Etymology Dictionary. Online Etymology Dictionary. And I put the extra T in there because that's where it came. Adverb. In a literal sense, from literal, plus or minus li. Since the 17th century, it has been used in metaphors, hyperbole, to indicate what follows must be taken in the strongest admissible sense. This is not showing the actual history of the word. Let's go to literal. Let's see. Late 14th century. Here we go. Origin. Taking words in their natural meaning, originally in reference to scripture and opposed to mystical or allegorical. from the late Latin, literalis or literalis, of or belonging to letters or writing. And that's from Latin, littera, letter alphabetic sign, literature, books, related to literalness. So it's pretty straightforward. Its meaning hasn't changed that much since the days of Latin. Up to three viewers. Awesome. So if there's any other words you think that would be fun to... Hi, Bats. Thank you for the happy birthday. Appreciate that. And thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it. I hope it's not too boring of a live stream. Okay, this is one of the other ones he suggested we look into, and this is diversity. So we're going to head over back to the OED and see what it has to say. I'm probably going to throw in equity with this one because that one was recommended to me by one of my patrons the other day. Just doxed myself, Multnomah County. Oh well. Okay, diversity. Oldest definition in the Oxford English Dictionary is the condition or quality of being diverse, different, or varied. Difference, unlikeness. So when things are unlike each other. Let's look up just diverse, the base word of diversity, because diversity is the word that's being overused, but understanding the base word can be important too. So paste that in there. Let's see, diverse as an adjective. There we go. Oldest definition: different in character or quality, not of the same kind, not alike in nature or qualities. Formerly also written divers. So the Oxford English Dictionary is massive. I don't even know the number of volumes. They're only printing one copy of the new edition that's physical, and that's going to go to the Queen of England. It's going to remain just an online archive now because there's just so much in it. The words, most of them aren't even used anymore. Most of them are archaic, and if they show an Old English word in the etymologies of these, you can click on them and it'll take you right to them. In fact, we'll go to divers and see what comes up with different or not alike. Now, if you're looking up like divers as like someone that dives or people that dive, I mean, you could click on this. I mean, you'd have to ignore the adjective part, but get something completely different. So so we'll go back and actually let's go back to that because that looked like it had the actual etymology in it that was longer. You have to dig to get the content for my... So I'm going to copy this because I'm probably going to need to hit on that in my video. Stupid key commands. There we go. Okay, Middle English diverse. French divers. It's a feminine word apparently. Different, odd, wicked, cruel. Ooh, this is good stuff. Spanish diverso. And so all of those words that came from Latin diversus, meaning contrary, different, unlike, separate, original, turned different ways. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. I usually have to look that stuff up. I can't remember all of it, so. The spelling in Middle English, indifferently, diverse, stress, I don't know. That's pretty interesting that it means different, odd, wicked. So if we go back to its French meaning, it's after being derived from Latin, it means odd, wicked, and cruel. Not necessarily a good thing. Now, I do want to look up, I like to look it up in other dictionaries as well, see what they have to say about it. Diversity. Plural, diversities. Condition of having or being composed of different elements, varieties, especially the inclusion of different types of people, such as different races or cultures in groups or origins, programs intended to promote diversity in school. Okay, and this is one of my favorite places, the etymology dictionary. Quality of being diverse, usually gives a short definition, but it says middle 14th century. Wickedness or perversity. Just, I can have so much fun. I'm going to need to do a whole episode about this word because I didn't realize it actually meant wickedness or diversity or oddness. I could have a lot of fun with that. Contrariety, contradiction, disagreement. Ooh, because that's what happens with diversity. Is the disagreement with our current culture. They want to change it to something different. Okay. Diversus turned a different way. Can you read what's on the screen, the web pages when I'm in there? Thanks, Drew. The poetry one will be interesting. I've got to wait on the Cozy Comfy Poetry channel. After I've got to write the script, send it to her. She'll give me her response, and we'll get that taken care of. In fact, I even got the script right here. I'm not sure how I want to define it or which word I'm going to use, poetry, poet, poem, because looking through the etymology and stuff, each of those variants, the poem, poetry, poet, seem to have slightly different paths to becoming what we are today. I thought they would all be the same word, just with different endings to indicate different things, but they all came kind of differently. So I got to decide how I want to handle that in my script. But interesting fact about poetry is poesis meant to make, literally to bring things into existence. So there's even scientific terms like I can't say it, this crazy Latin or Greek, hemotopoiesis, meaning the formation of blood cells. Sorry that took me so long to say. But there's lots of words like that where poetry just meant to make things, to bring things into existence. And another thing I haven't touched on in any of my videos, but a lot of the words that we use come from different languages. Not all of them had an actual English analog that came before it, but poetry did. I My old English is very weak. Meter meter growers, meaning like verse or to make verse. Meter craft is the one I like the best. Is the word for the art of versification. So the art of making poetry is meter craft, which I found very interesting as the English acronym, because that's very, not acronym, but the analogy. It tells you exactly what it is. It's making meter, like metered speech, metered poetry, and it crafting it. It's really cool. Is there any words you'd like me to look up? Anything interesting for anyone in the audience right now? Let me know in the chat. I know there's quite a bit of delay on the chat on there. I'm getting used to that. So need to come up with, let me go back to the diversity word that we're looking at. Native meaning, being contrary to what is agreeable or right, perversity, evil. Existed in English from the late 15th century, but was obsolete from the 17th century. Diversity is a virtue in a nation, is an idea from the rise of the modern democracies in the 1790s, where it kept one faction from arrogating all power. But this was not quite the modern sense, as ethnicity, gender, sexual identity were not the qualities in mind. See, at this time, that was probably around a lot of the religious revolutions and some political revolutions. So they were talking about, it was diversity of thought was what diversity meant up until modern day. And that's what they thought was the virtue, was having Protestants, Catholics, and having different denominations of Christianity, different governments, having different states and different ways people thought the thing should be run is what was the virtue. Not having everybody agree on the same way things should be run, but have different ethnicities, gender, sexual identities, and so on. That's not what the virtue was. Diversity, they're conflating essentially two different words at this point. Diversity from the 1790s, or from the 17th century, to diversity today. They've given it two different meanings and conflated the two words. So anytime they read diversity in a historical text, they read into it their own meaning. And it's important to keep those meanings separate so you can understand what people believed back then. It's also important to understand what people mean when they use the word today. So this word is fascinating. I'll still put it in my top 5 misused words of 2017 video. And it's mostly going to be about how words change their meaning over time. Is what I'm going to cover in that. And this is another great example that I didn't realize was going to be as good as it is. Racism. This one I find interesting because there's 2 words, and I haven't done enough research to know the difference and what. Thank you, Point Curation. Actually, let me skip racism. We'll move on, and I'll do some research on the word that Point Curation recommended in the Patreon. And what do you guys think? Those of you who are my patrons, what do you guys think of the changes that they're making with the new fee structure? Let me know in the comments. We might talk about that. I'm not too upset by it, but I want to hear what you have to say. Let's see, we got equity is what we wanted to look up. See if I can spell that correctly. Like I said early on in the stream, the reason I like dictionaries is I spent a lot of time using them because I've never been good at spelling. I know that sounds a little oxymoronic, but we'll see. Equity. Actually, I want to we'll look it up in the Oxford English Dictionary first. It's one of my favorite things in the world is this book. Thanks you, Mumberthrax, for the happy birthday. Equity. And as I mentioned earlier, the Oxford English Dictionary gives you the oldest definition first. This one dates back to apparently the 1315. Thank you for hanging in there, Point Curation. I understand the frustration. I'm a little ambivalent, but I understand why people dislike the changes. And I still think their service is good, and I think it's important for the future of content curation or content creation in the future. The quality of being equal or fair, fairness, impartiality, even-handed dealing. So, I think this old definition is still very different than how people use it today. When you hear people say equity, a lot of times in the Evergreen State University, that's where the word started coming up a lot. Just north of us, or north of me up in Washington. The Equity Council, the way they use the word seems to be more about results and not about treatment. What is fair and right? Something that is fair and right, rarely in plural. This is closer to the definition that people are using today. Let's go down. The compounds. Defined so as to include other systems and analogs and others. Okay, let me look at the etymologies here real quick. Doesn't look like there's much here. It comes from French. Equite. I don't know French, so I'm probably pronouncing that terribly. From Latin, meaning fair. Okay, and in today it seems that equity means not fairness, but equal distribution or results, regardless of what is just or fair. I think the difference right now is the point at which fairness happens. Because if you look at a system and you look at just a state, like a single image of it, what you get is, does everybody have the same thing right now? And if the answer is no, that could be defined as unfair. But if you look at the system as a timeline, the beginning state could have started in a state of fairness, and the end state ends with, the Pareto distribution, a lot of people on top or a lot of people on the bottom and very few people on top. And I think my interpretation of that system or that way of looking at it is important, because that's why death evolved, is the way I like to put it, is because the people that are up here die at some point, and their goods, their money, their wealth then is either passed down to their descendants or redistributed through some means that they've selected. Their descendants may not be as good with the money as they were, and then it just gets spent and sent out into the economy. The people that are looking for equity are looking at a static image of what reality is at this moment, and they want that to be the same. I was listening to an audiobook. It was The Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius, and he's talking, the character is in a prison. This is like early medieval period, and he's talking to philosophy, an embodiment of philosophy, and they're talking about fortune, like the god Fortune. And she has this wheel that she turns, and to become fortunate, you have to get on this wheel, and when you're at the top, you're riding high, you're at the high point. But to get that, you have to agree to go down the other side of this wheel that she's on. And people have understood that for centuries, that when people have a lot, they lose it very quickly. The situation Boethius was in was he'd been like an advisor to a king, he'd been wealthy, and now he was imprisoned on an island, unsure of what his fate would be, as he was writing this book. And shortly after he finished the book, he was killed in probably one of the most gruesome ways I've ever heard described. It was a very enlightening book. I like stuff like that. But his description of wheel and the wheel of fortune and how people go up and down really, I think, illuminates what the problem everybody's seeing and what the solution is. It's time and death. And I don't think people look at life that way. It's like the arguments about now I can't even think. Sorry. It takes me a long time to do things like this and think things through and write those scripts. In fact, it takes a long time for me to read them and get them recorded. Let's move on to another word here. So what is fair in the world of fortune is that sometimes you have good fortune and sometimes you will have bad. It will not always be equal between people at different places on the wheel. Here's what it was. The wealthy change. The top 1% will always have a huge amount of wealth because they're the top 1%. But who is in the top 1% changes from year to year. If you own a house, if you own a big expensive house but you don't make a lot of money, if you sell that house, you could be one of the top earners for the year because you brought in a lot of money. And that puts you in the 1% of earners for that year. But the next year you may not be in the top 1% of earners because you don't have that asset and you haven't sold it that year. There's a lot more nuance to who's in the 1% and who the haves are and who the have-nots are. It changes. And I think that's what people misunderstand. And I really think hypocrisy, that's the word I'm working on next. But I think that's the solution to the equity problems that people are looking at, where they want people to have the same stuff. Because if everything stays the same and everybody always has the same level of wealth, that's kind of boring. There's nothing for me to strive for. There's no way for me to become a better person, because I don't need to. But if we let people take turns and have that opportunity, yep, pretty much United States, Canada, a lot of Europe we're the 1% of the world. Okay, let's see, where's the word? This word is one of them I really wanted to look into because I don't think a lot of people know exactly what that word means. Impeachment. They think it means removal from the office. Of the presidency. And it just happened. I remember I was a kid and Bill Clinton was impeached. He was never removed from office. This is a word we'd have to look up in some kind of legal dictionary, though, to get the definition that we're looking for them. But I want to see what it means in general. Action of impeachment. Hindrance, prevention, obstruction, impediment, obstacle. Okay, and it looks like it comes from French impeachment, and that's to impeach. Let's take a look at the word to impeach just to see if we can get a better idea. Latin impedicare, to catch, entangle. It's an impediment, basically, is what the word comes from. So they're going to impede the president by doing that. Let's see if Merriam-Webster has to say. Sorry if I'm being a little ADD with my topics here. To bring an accusation against. Okay. To charge with a crime or misdemeanor, specifically to charge a public official before a competent tribunal with misconduct in office. Well, it looks like it just means basically accusation, like a formal accusation. And then down here we got the third, to remove from office, especially for misconduct. Let's check Wikipedia. They've usually got some reasonable information. It's kind of like common knowledge. The best place to go for common knowledge kind of information. Let's see. Impeachment is the process by which a legislative body formally levels charges against a high official of government. Impeachment does not necessarily mean removal from office. It is only a formal statement of charges akin to indictment in criminal law. So most of these people that are using the word impeachment to say that it means removing the president from office, I mean, they haven't even looked it up at all. I guess what they're coming from is they think the charges against him are so obviously true that if he's impeached, he will be removed. But I think in the case of the president that's in there now, it's mostly going to be a hindrance and not so much a removal. Let's see. Because impeachment and conviction of officials involved overturning of normal constitutional procedures by which individuals achieve high office, election, and because it generally requires a supermajority, they are usually reserved for those deemed to have committed serious abuses of their office. And they're not even accusing him of anything he's done while in office. Yeah, there's a strong stigma. I mean, growing up, I thought impeachment meant removal from office because I always heard it applied to Richard Nixon, who retired. He left office. He resigned. He didn't wasn't removed from office by the impeachment process. And it turns out there was another president before him that was impeached. And me and my misspellings again, sorry. Let's see, Wikipedia. Impeachment in the United States. Let's see. And it can't just give me a list. Andrew Johnson was impeached. Impeachment of Andrew Johnson. This could be a fun episode to go through because I could talk about the history of impeachment through the United States, talk about Andrew Johnson, Richard Nixon, and Bill Clinton, what they were all impeached for. That could be fun. High crimes and misdemeanors. According to Article 2 of the United States. Okay, I'm already bored of this for this purposes of the stream, unless you guys think it's interesting. And thank you for showing up. I really appreciate actually having an audience. I wasn't sure how many people would show up in this. Let's go back to racism, because there's another word that is strongly associated with it: racialism. And I don't actually know if there's a huge difference between those two words. I know that racialism is older, and I think it usually just means you could probably look me up with that information, couldn't you? Oh well, I'm not that worried. Racialism. Here again, Oxford English Dictionary gives oldest definition: racism. An earlier term than racism, but now largely surpassed. So we'll click on racism since it's not giving me that much of a difference here. A belief that one's own racial or ethnic group is superior, or that other such groups represent a threat to one's cultural identity, racial integrity, or economics. This entry was the 2008. So this is probably closer to the more social justice definition that people use. But it still doesn't mention power plus privilege, which I kind of expected it would, being revised by 2008. That might have slipped in there, but or groups possess specific characteristics, abilities, or qualities which can be compared or evaluated. Oh, yeah, that was the second definition, essentially, is also a belief that members of different... So racism doesn't necessarily mean you think your group is better, or that the groups are a threat to you. It can also mean that you think races or ethnic groups possess specific characteristics, abilities, or qualities which can be compared and evaluated. Hence, prejudice, discrimination, antagonism directed against people of other racial or ethnic groups, or more widely, other nationalities, especially based on such belief. So it's saying here that racism is treating people poorly because you believe that groups can be compared to each other. So you could believe Asians are smarter than white people, and that they're weaker, or some think they're worse at basketball than black people, and you could treat them differently. You could treat them worse, and that would be racism. See, and let's open up that. Racial plus ism. That's point curation. That's kind of what that second definition here means. Also, a belief that members of different racial or ethnic groups possess specific characteristics, abilities, or qualities which can be compared or evaluated, and then treating them differently based on those. So if you believe that Asians are smarter than other people, you might hire an Asian over a black person or a white person. This second definition gives negative things done based on race, not positive things done based on race. And that's what I thought the difference between racialism and racism were. Is racialism is where you believe there's a difference, but you only really treat people better on the... You believe there's a difference, but it doesn't affect your decision making in negative ways. You don't hate people because they're different. Mumberthrax, that could be, but I think I think what they're trying to go with in this definition is that if they're treated negatively. But race realist seems to be the word for what you're looking at there, but that doesn't even count either, because that would make everybody that, because you wouldn't hire a basketball team full of short people or short Asian people, or it was Walter Williams. I think it was Walter Williams. Yeah, it was Walter Williams. I heard him say in a video, if you had to build a basketball team of 5 people and you had 15 people to choose from, 5 African Americans, 5 Caucasians, and 5 Asians, and you had to build a team from those people, who would win? The most diverse team, or the team where you picked all of the African Americans to be on the team? I don't know if you'd call that racism, but everyone has an idea about who would win that bet, who would win that game of basketball. And that's what I was hoping I'd find, is a word for that, treating people. So if the only information you know is you've got black people, white people, and Asian people, and you got to pick 5 people from these 15 to build a basketball team. And I was hoping that racialism would be the word for that. And it's not. It's, according to the OED anyway. Let's look in some of the other dictionaries. Let's look, that's Oxford again. Let's look at Webster. A theory that race determines human traits and capacities, also racism. So it looks like there's a lot of different definitions around, and none of them I found so far say anything about power plus privilege. Point curation says, I think it would be racist to say a black person's experience or viewpoint is different from a white person's, as opposed to saying 2 individuals have different viewpoints. Yeah, I think that can be accurate. I also think that the first one is a very collectivist view. And I think that's really what racism is the worst form of collectivism. Because you're looking at people based on not even their skin colors, just what... You're looking at that group, and you're believing they all have the same traits. And you're not looking at the individuals within the group. Let's look at that. I'm pretty sure collectivism was created. Let's see what that. Let's see. I'm curious. And I can't spell. Or I just missed a letter. The socialistic theory of the collective ownership or control of all the means of production, and especially of land, by the whole community or state, the people collectively, for the benefit of the people. There's probably a lot more to it than that. That's interesting. That immediately goes to socialism in this definition. Because if you're looking at people as a whole, people as groups, pardon me. I mean, here, I know what word we should do. Prejudice. No, it doesn't. That's it. I think it was referring to the political the political meaning of collectivism. I'm trying to, that's why I looked up prejudice. I'm trying to find a word that more accurately describes judging people based as a group. Preconceived opinions not based on reason or actual experience, bias, partiality, unreasoned dislike, hostility, or antagonism towards or discrimination against a race, sex, or other class of people. I really think prejudice is a good word for it, but that's because that's in the 13th century. This is still the oldest definition of the word. The king in, sometimes it's weird in older text, prejudice, because they use I as the king in prejudice of him, and to let other bishops, that's not helping me figure out the definition here. So, actually, let me look up Webster's collectivism. Sorry, I'm being distracted, ADHD again. Political or economic theory advocating collective control, especially over production or distribution. Emphasis on collective rather than individual action or identity. Yeah, that's an interesting observation, Mumberthrax. So just like the OED definition of racism, prejudice also lacks any positive form. So like your example of saying Asians are intelligent doesn't fit that definition. That sounds about right. I would in my dictionary, if I was right, I change the definitions. I don't just read when I create my entries, I don't just read the Oxford English definition. I give the definition that I hear and I understand when I read the word. So if I said prejudice, I would give the definition of essentially prejudging something. So I have a prejudice towards my wife. I'd rather spend my time with her than with someone else. That would be a prejudice. I have a prejudice towards chocolate ice cream. I've prejudged all chocolate ice cream as being better than vanilla. it's not necessarily bad things. And so I would probably make my definition, or I definitely would make my definition and my entry on prejudice be more neutral. I might mention that it often has a negative connotation in modern society, but I don't think that's the way I think a lot of people use it enough in a positive way. It's like I have a prejudice towards something. I have a prejudice towards Nintendo versus PlayStation. I think that would be a better definition. And that's what I want to do with my dictionaries. I don't always think that what's in the dictionary is accurate to the way people use them. And that's why dictionaries change their definitions. And if you look at the Oxford English Dictionary, we're looking at prejudice. This word was updated in 2007, where there was an older version that was created in 1989. And we can even go look at that older entry in here. Prejudice, injury, determined or detriment or damage caused to a person by judgment or action in which his rights are disregarded, resulting in injury, hence injury to a person or thing likely to be the consequence of some action. Now chiefly in particular phrases as in sometimes these older ones get confusing. And I have to read them 3 or 4 times. But it's also interesting here that prejudice is considered as a noun is considered damage to a person caused by a judgment. Injury, damage, hurt, loss. In the genitive. To terminate, dismiss, with extreme prejudice, to kill or assassinate, hence termination with extreme prejudice. That's fascinating. Where did it come from? It came from prefix, judicium, judgment, sentence. See, same as in judicial. So yeah, it does mean prejudge. Prejudice, damage. Huh. Sorry, I'm reading and trying to. Let's look it up in the. Let's see. This one's usually a lot clearer. Eudesis. Genitive meaning injury, physical harm. In the mid-14th century is a legal term. Oh, so when they say with extreme prejudice, it means to do physical harm. Wow. A violation of legal rights, meaning preconceived opinion, especially not necessarily unfavorable. Especially but not necessarily unfavorable is from the late 14th century in English. Oh, so it changed meaning to mean preconceived opinions in the 14th century. From medieval Latin prejudicium, injustice. From so prior judgment. So it seems to be made of words that mean to prejudge things, but it meant damage previously. That's interesting. Prejudice, verb, to injure or be detrimental to. Interesting. So, sorry, I've got a bit of a cough here. Oh, it's almost been an hour. The time has flown. Okay. One other thing I'd like to mention. Do we have any Tolkien fans out there? I'm kind of into philology, and he's probably the most famous philologist in the world. What a lot of people don't know is that Tolkien was a writer for the Oxford English Dictionary. He wrote a lot of the W section, and one of them that was specifically pointed out to me was in was walrus. Someone pointed out that this particular entry was written by J.R.R. Tolkien, the same guy that wrote The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. The seahorse, or morse. I'm not even going to try and read that. A carnivorous, pinniped marine mammal allied to the... Okay, I shouldn't have tried to read this. Allied to the seal, or oteran, or sea lion, and chiefly distinguished by two tusks, exerted upper canine teeth. It inhabits the Arctic seas, a variety found in the North Pacific, has sometimes received the distinct specific name Obesus. So this is a bit of Tolkien's work that a lot of even some of his big fans probably don't even know is Tolkien's definition of the word walrus. Oh, it looks like it comes from German. The olding obese seahorse. Obesus. Yep. Obese seahorse. Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. I'm glad this went well. I had a fun time. I didn't know how it was going to go. Happy birthday to me. Thank you to all of my fans, followers, and patrons. I look forward to doing more of these in the future. My recording rig and my computer is in the living room, so with a family running about, I don't particularly think it's going to be good to have a television going on in the background. So I'll try and find time to do these. Usually I'll end up doing them late at night, or if I ever have a day off at work, I can do it in the middle of the day when everyone's gone at school or work. So thank you for joining me, and I had a fun time. Thanks. Bye.